What is going on, everyone? Welcome back into another edition of the Fan Committee Football Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Tooman, as always, joined by my co-host, Michael Herrera. Mike, we've been away for a little bit here, but holidays are coming up. We're starting to get a little more free time again. So after a weird week of NFL games, some good games, but some weird games. How are you feeling about your Miami Dolphins after a tough loss? We always leave with the Dolphins. How are you feeling after that loss to San Fran?
It's unfortunate, but it's not exactly surprising to say the least. They're filled to the brim with talent at basically every position. It's kind of crazy that we don't talk about them enough, and I think part of that's probably because they underwhelm a lot of the time. People were talking about how do you win games scoring only 10 points, but they make it happen just because of their stellar defense. And unfortunately, we ran into that stellar defense this week, and Tua didn't have a great game. I think that Tua. I don't know if it was jitters. I don't know what happened, but whatever happened, he didn't have a great game. And, it is what it is. But I have to give it to the Niners. I think they're great. But I'm also not ready to push the panic button. I think a lot of people, analysts and fans alike, they immediately see the Dolphins are frauds. This is a team that's not playoff bound. And it's really frustrating because it's okay to have a bad game against a good defense. People just don't like Tua, and that's fine. But I just think they're really ready to give up on him the moment anything happens. And I think it's kind of unfair because we see quarterbacks I don't necessarily agree with Emmanuel Acho's point about Justin Herbert, but he gets cut a lot of slack when he doesn't win a game. It's his team sucks, his coaching's bad, and it's never the fact that Herbert threw an interception within 2 minutes of the game ending. So it's and that's Herbert's still a great quarterback, and he's better than Tua. I'm not gonna sit here and deny that either. Well, just from a physical standpoint, the guy's arm is crazy. But I think, we have a rookie head coach. Our team is young. Tua is still a young quarterback. Bad games can happen, and I'm hoping he's going to have a good bounce back the rest of the season. But I'm not ready to panic like everyone else seems to be.
Yeah, it was an interesting game because it was probably the one of the best offenses besides the Chiefs, probably the offense that's doing the best right now, going up against what I would say is what defense is playing the best right now. And the Niners wound up winning, even with Jimmy G getting injured. And I don't know, it's weird with the Dolphins because it didn't help that Waddle got injured and it was playing limited snaps once he came back from the injury mid-game. So I don't know. Tua, it is weird. I still don't get why so many people dislike him. It's basically because he had a bad rookie season. They said he was a bust, but it was really just because he was coming off a hip injury. And then now he has a good coach who actually wants to run a good offense. They have Tyreek Hill, so of course he's playing better. So I don't get why people want him to fail so bad to the point where he has one bad game and everybody's getting on him. I mean, we thought he was going to be out for the season. Maybe we thought his career might be over a month and a half ago. He came back and started playing better than he was before. So I don't really know what people want to see from Tua at this point. I think the Dolphins are playing great. And before we get to the playoffs, because we're going to talk about the wider playoff picture here today, I don't know, just what you can finish your thought on that. What would you say to that?
They're just trying to write him off easily. And I understand that Tua, he's not Mahomes, he's not Herbert, he's not any of these quarterbacks. And especially it's a really bad look when you lose to Mr. Irrelevant, you lose to Brock Purdy, which I will accept that Brock Purdy played fine. And I'm going to say fine, not because he, threw interception and that. I'm almost certain he didn't throw it past 20 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and act like he, lit up the game. This was very much a defensive game. I think, even the Dolphins offense, our McDaniels himself admitted it, is that he didn't run the ball enough and that's where he messed up. He was I abandoned the run almost immediately in this game. And, Jeff Wilson, who's our starting running back, who I think is really underrated as well, had one touch the entire game, which is insane.
Really? Wow.
Or not the entire game. He had, I think he had one rush and then 2 pass attempts, and he dropped the 2 pass attempts, and then he just ran on one.
Huh.
So,
that's odd.
I think people are just also just and the jokes about Brock Purdy are funny, I will accept, but let's not act like Brock Purdy was playing he was Patrick Mahomes. He was doing what he was asked. He was managing the offense. He was doing it more than Jimmy G was. Jimmy G throws it farther than 20 yards. Does he mess it up sometimes? Yeah, he does. But, I think the Nets are just a really good team, and we ran into them and they were really good, and that's just how it is. But hopefully the Dolphins are going to bounce back from it. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that can kind of bring us to the wider playoff picture here. That's the main thing we want to discuss today because the Niners and the Dolphins, they're both embroiled in divisional kind of races here, close divisional races. Niners have been playing really well. The Dolphins have been playing well before this game, obviously, as well. So we can stick with the Dolphins for now. Start with the AFC. Just you already beat the Bills earlier this year in week 3. The Bills 9-3 now. You're 8-4. The Jets are 7-5. Patriots still kind of hanging in there at 6-6, but losing to Buffalo this past week isn't going to help them. How do you see this race evolving? Do you think the Dolphins can still win this division? I think you've said to me before that you think the Bills are the better team, but you already beat them once. You're only a game behind, and the Josh Allen's been playing a little bit worse lately than he did the first 2 months. So, where's your head at as a Dolphins fan right now?
I think the division title is still entirely within our reach, but I don't think necessarily that's for sure what's going to happen because the problem is, although we did beat the Bills, as I said, I do think they're still the better team, and we play them in Buffalo this time around, and it's
Yes.
expected to snow when we play them, and that's a really bad look for a Dolphins team who almost never
Does it
plays.
snow a lot in Miami?
Unfortunately, it does not. So I think it's going to be really tough game to win. I think we can give them a good fight, definitely a better fight than last game. Because if we're being honest, the only reason we beat the Bills was because we outlasted them in the heat. And like even our own players were being subbed out for cramping and stuff, just like the Bills were. So I think that we still can win the division, but that path, if we beat the Bills, I think we probably will be able to get the division. But if we can't beat them, we're probably going to come in second. We'll grab a wild card spot, and that's totally fine by me. I think the Patriots are kind of at this point a foregone conclusion out of it. Personally, I
I
understand
agree.
that they're still mathematically still in the race, but that's kind of it. And the Jets, the Jets are weird because, and I'm sure you agree, like
Yeah.
it's weird because like they're a really good team, but because of what's happening with like the quarterback play, you're kind of just like questioning like
Hmm.
are like what's happening here now? Because like Mike White may be playing decently, but he still was the third stringer on this team. Like, I don't really know what to think of the Jets, and they did lose this week
Right.
to the Vikings.
I
Although they
was watching that game pretty closely. It was
yeah,
another, we can get to the Vikings in a bit. It was another Vikings game where they start hot and then, as usual, they allow a team that they're probably better than to get back in the game. And at that point, I was like, "Oh, is Mike White about to lead a game-winning drive?" They came up short in the end. He threw the pick last second, but the Jets played great in the second half. Mike White's turned in 2 good performances now. Uh, he's definitely better than Zach Wilson. So that's an upgrade for the Jets. They also have this new running back in Zonovan Knight, who's turned in 2 straight good performances. He's playing better than James Robinson was. And without Brees Hall, they needed someone to step in. So, and their defense is good. I think the Jets will make the playoffs. Would you agree with that? I think these 3 teams at the top of this division make it.
yeah, I think they can also sneak into a wild card spot because I think even though like what's happening with their quarterback is kind of odd right now, as you said, Mike White still has played decently. Like he hasn't, I don't think he's really lost them a game yet
Yeah.
so far. And I think it's just a very odd scenario, but I think they are one of the better teams, even though I don't think the Dolphins or the Jets can grab the division title. I think we'll see both of those teams in the wild card spots. Because out of the other AFC teams, I don't really know who else I'd pick because like there's the AFC West. The only team that's good in there is the Chiefs. The Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos are all middling to bad. There's the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. I don't know. It's very
Well,
confusing.
The Ravens, it's interesting. So, let me look at Lamar's injury. It came out today. What do you have? A
It was
torn
a PCL or something, right?
PCL. Yeah. So that's a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I don't think they really specified how long he's supposed to be out. They're 8-4, so I think they're gonna get at least the 7 seed. I don't see the Patriots or Chargers catching the Ravens, but I do think the Bengals might move ahead of them in the division. Do you think that's in play?
I mean, yeah, they're 8-4. They played a great game against the Chiefs, which honestly I was shocked. I didn't know the Bengals had that in them. Yeah, they played great. I think there's 3 wildcard spots this year, right? Because
Yes.
they expand the playoffs. Okay, yeah. So honestly, like if you said Dolphins, Jets, and then either Ravens or Bengals, depending on who wins the division, I think that's probably the right idea. because the AFC South, the only good team is the Titans, and that's because they're the division leaders. Other than that, the rest of the AFC South is not concerning in the least. The Browns and Steelers, I think they're just kind of plodding along. They're just trying to get this season over with.
I will say, I was talking to some Steelers fans. They do have a super easy schedule. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I agree with you that the most likely scenario is the 3 AFC East teams and then whoever doesn't win the division between the Ravens and the Bengals.
Yeah.
But let me read you the Steelers' schedule. And I want to hear what you have to say about it. So they're home for the Ravens without Lamar, most likely. I by the way, I did look up that injury. It says usually players miss 1 to 3 weeks with that injury.
Fine.
So Lamar could miss this game at the very least this week. So the Steelers are home for the Ravens, who will probably have Tyler Huntley. Then they got the Panthers, the Raiders, the Ravens again, and then the Browns. They could very well go 3-2 or 4-1 down that stretch. And all of a sudden, they're kind of Mike Tomlin's over 500 streak still in play. I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think the Steelers are very good. I think the Raiders can beat the Steelers. But what would you say to that schedule? What do you have to say about that?
I understand how at first glance it seems like a pretty easy schedule for them. But if we're being honest, the Steelers, this is not the Steelers of even 2 years ago. These are the Steelers of now with Kenny Pickett at quarterback. And Kenny Pickett, I'm not going to say like he's a bust or anything, but his rookie season, he still has time to develop and possibly become a franchise quarterback. But right now, his rookie season's going very just average at best. And they barely beat the Falcons. They beat the Falcons because Marcus Mariota threw a pick. They got that last pick and they were able to ice the game. But they barely beat the Falcons, who even with all of the early in the season, pumping up I was doing of the Falcons, because I thought they were a feisty team. They
were for a while.
They were for a little bit early in the season. It's kind of just but the Panthers are they're scrappy. They're trying to win games. I don't understand why, because they're playing themselves out of one of the top 2 quarterbacks, but that's their decision. And I don't know. The Browns are, I think, better than the Steelers. I'm going to be honest. And I think the Ravens, even with Tyler Huntley at quarterback, I think Tyler Huntley's he's a decent backup because he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's got a similar skill set. So a similar skill set. I said that backwards. And he can run that offense the same way Lamar does. Obviously not in terms of rushing, but he's pretty decent. He won them some games last year as well. So I don't really see the Steelers possibly doing that. It's possible. Obviously, I won't deny that, things go right, but I just don't with the way the Steelers have been playing. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I completely agree. I do think the Browns, as long as Watson, and I don't want to talk about Watson, but if he's going to play the way he's supposed to, and he shakes off the rust from this past week that we saw, I don't see why the Browns wouldn't be able to beat the Steelers. So, I think we're in agreement that these last 3 playoff teams will probably be the Dolphins, Jets, and then the loser of that AFC North, the 2 8-4 teams in Cincy and Baltimore, whoever doesn't win the division. I mean, the Chargers, they have so much talent. But I remember we did it before the season. We did a podcast about the AFC West. Not to say I'm right about everything. I had the Packers as the second best team in the league. I had the Rams being good again. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I did say the Chargers, the coaching, and the injury history of the people on this team is going to hold them back. And I'm proud to say I kind of got that right. Now, what I was wrong about was Denver being better than the Chargers, because they most certainly aren't. But they're an absolute disgrace. But the Chargers, what that's the last team we can talk about in this wild card race. Where do you think their season goes from here?
The Chargers is also kind of hard to tell, because you're right. That is what we discussed, before the season started, was how will the injuries stack up? We both said that this could be a really good team if the injuries, go their way. Yeah. And unfortunately, they haven't been. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have both missed times at various points this year, and it's kind of a weird deal with them. And honestly, I just think the Chargers, they haven't played anywhere near the expectations they should. They lost to the Raiders. And, the Raiders I don't think they're actually a bad team. I just think there's the coaching and, some players have underperformed that have put them in this position to be so low in the standings. But they lost to the Raiders of all teams. And I think the Chargers are better than the Raiders. That's not a good sign for them, especially because they, they're not. It is the next game, I believe, is we play the Chargers
Yes, you
in
do.
a prime time game.
Mhm.
Sunday night it's the prime time game, and I don't know. I think the Dolphins are better, and maybe it's because it's my own team, but I really just do think that Tua is going to bounce back in this game. I think that the run is going to be established well. And once you establish the run, the passing game's very easy to open up with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and even Trent Sherfield, as the
Yeah,
underrated third guy.
I gotta bring this up. So me and Flamini were clowning you early in the year because you're always
Yeah.
talking about Trent Sherfield, and
Trent Sherfield.
all of a sudden he's actually like a viable player, and it's just hilarious. He's had like 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
no, I remember when he was on the Cardinals, I was like, why is this dude playing? And then he'd go out and make like an 80-yard catch, and you're like, all right, I see the vision. The Cardinals got rid of him for some reason, even though they didn't have any
A
receivers.
lot of teams did, and now
And
he's just
then
popping off.
he went to the Niners where he played a decent role as like the fourth wide receiver under McDaniels, which is I guess is why he was brought
Yeah.
to Miami, where he's been a very pleasant surprise. When at the beginning of the season when I was talking about like, oh, Trent Sherfield, I thought like he'll be a decent number 4 or 5. He'll catch maybe a touchdown or two the whole season, make a good catch. And here he
Yeah.
is, as you said, through like I think 2 or 3 touchdowns the last few games. So
Yeah, my dad's a Cowboys fan. He's very unhappy that Cedric Wilson's been hung out to dry because he would have rather just had Cedric Wilson on Dallas.
yeah, I don't
It's kind of
I it is unfortunate the Cedric Wilson situation. It's just that I don't think anyone expected the Dolphins to get Tyreek Hill,
yeah, right,
because we signed Cedric Wilson like 2 days before that happened.
right,
But the thing is, it's also kind of telling that Trent Sherfield has been playing over Cedric Wilson regardless at the 3.
right.
So it's kind of just, it is unfortunately a lot of money we spent on him, but we're probably just going to trade him in the offseason. It is what it is. But I think the Chargers Dolphins game, I think it's going to be a good Sunday night game. I think it's going to be one of the better primetime games we've had this year because unfortunately we haven't had too many. A lot of people have been talking about the Bucs Saints games. That NFC division is wide open. The Falcons and Panthers and Saints could all easily make the playoffs over the Buccaneers, not in terms of like because they're good teams, but just because of the fact that that entire division has played terribly this year. So
Yeah, no, I know. Like looking at if you look at the NFC, we can start with that division. It's such a
yeah,
mess. It's so bad. I guess Tampa. I would say Tampa gets in at this point. I was holding out hope for the Falcons, but they lost to the Steelers this week, and I think they lost to someone they could have beat the week before that as well. I'm neglecting who it was, but I don't know. They've kind of the wheels have fallen off for them. No Kyle Pitts. Drake London isn't getting targeted as much as I think he should be. At this point they're just kind of spinning wheels to me. I think Tampa's going to get in, and they're going to get smoked by whoever that 5 seed is. They will probably be Dallas, but I think they're going to get killed.
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I don't know, the NFC is weird because it's a very top loaded, conference. We've got, the NFC East, we got Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders who are all playing exceptionally well. I think honestly, out of that division, I think the Giants are the pretenders.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest.
thank
I
you.
don't. I don't think they have what it takes to win a playoff game. Will they get to the playoffs? Honestly, I think there's a very good chance they sneak into a wild card spot.
Okay.
But I don't think they're gonna match up to like the Niners or Eagles or Cowboys or like any team they play basically in the playoffs. Even if they play the Commanders could beat them as well. I think the Commanders are a very underrated team. I know that Taylor Heineke is not, an exceptional, specimen at quarterback, but he's helping them win games, and the defense is exceptional as usual. So it's a very wide open division. I think the Commanders at the bottom at 7-5 is very telling of how like
Right.
the rest of the NFC shakes out, because the only other good teams I would say personally are the Niners, Seahawks, and Vikings. I don't know if you agree with that take.
Uh, yeah, well, yeah, I would say those are the other playoff teams. I agree with that. I mean, the NFC East, we can focus on them because they're, as you said, they're phenomenal. I think the Eagles have all but married themselves to the 1 seed.
Yeah.
It would be a terrible collapse for them not to get it. They're 11-1. Like, and I said before the year, I was like, you look at this Eagles schedule, they could very well be a 15-2 team. And I'm not saying I think they were the far and away best team in the league. They're very good, but I was just like, schedule wise, they're going to have an easy time, and that's kind of what it's been. I mean, the run defense has struggled at times lately, or really all season, but they still find ways to win. They got good players on both sides of the ball. And then Dallas they just beat the Colts 54-19. They beat the Vikings, who are really good on offense, at least 40-3. Their defense is playing amazing. Dak's back and he looks healthy. So I think those two teams might be my top two contenders in the NFC. And I agree with you. I think the Giants, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs because I think the Commanders are going to beat them. But when they come off the bye in 2 weeks, I think the Commanders will win. But I don't know. And then the Seahawks also beat the Giants. So as long as the Seahawks win more games than the Giants down the stretch, which I think they're capable of, I don't think the Giants will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think it's possible they still sneak in because obviously their record is 7-4, and they are third in their division right now, so that can't be understated. But yeah, I do think that the Giants are very I know Daniel Jones hasn't played terribly this year. We were talking about at the beginning of the year, we thought he was the worst starting quarterback at one point in time. Evidently, it was Zach Wilson. We were looking at the wrong New York team. But I don't think, Daniel Jones is great. So even though I do think they could make the playoffs, I do also agree with you that it's very likely we also see them not, just because of the fact that there's also a team like Seahawks. The Seahawks are really good. I mean, Geno Smith is personally my comeback player of the year. I mean, the guy's been playing insane. It's just, I don't know if the Giants can just keep up with some of these other teams.
Yeah, I agree. I like the Seahawks. I just think that I know defensively they aren't always on par, but they do have good players. The rookie class has been awesome, led by Woolen and Walker, but really all of them. And I don't know, Geno's been having a better connection with DK Metcalf than Russell Wilson ever did. So I don't know. I think the Seahawks, I don't know. I just think they find a way to get to 9-8 or 10-7 and they get in. And then the Niners, obviously, we mentioned a while back in this pod, but the Niners are only a game ahead of Seattle. I think they're going to win the division. I know they lost Jimmy G, but even with Brock Purdy, I just think this team defensively and offensively is just way too talented. And I don't know, to me, the Niners, Eagles, and Cowboys are my three teams in this conference that could make the Super Bowl. I know the Vikings are 10-2, and I'm not trying to just be a hater of the Vikings, but besides my freaking Packers, who have they beaten decisively? They almost blow it every week. The Bills game, I will say the Bills game was awesome. It was a great win, but then they followed it up with getting absolutely decimated by Dallas. So it felt more like the Packers beating the Cowboys than a real win where the Vikings beat the Bills in overtime in a huge way. It felt like they just kind of, pulled one out of nowhere. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think the Vikings, of course, at 10-2 is a very hard, that's a tremendous collapse if you suddenly somehow lose the division.
They have actually already clinched the division.
They have it,
which tells you a lot about the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but I'm sure the Packers will be better next year. But I do agree with you. I think the Vikings, kind of similar to the Giants, are a bit of the pretender team in this conference. And
I would say the Vikings are the fake contender, where the Giants are just the fake competent team. I think the Vikings are good. It's just I don't think they're the second best team in this conference.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely a better way of phrasing. Yes, yeah. I do agree with that. It's kind of I understand that the Cowboys, they seem good, but this is what happens every year with the Cowboys. I think it's a very similar situation with the Vikings.
Yeah, well, I just think it's different this time. I don't know. I can't
explain. It might be. And, if they play well in the playoffs and they win a few games, congrats. Hats off to them. If they make the Super Bowl, incredible. I'm going to root against them like I've never rooted against in my life because I hate the Cowboys. But I will gladly give them their props if they turn out to be a good team. Yeah. But the Cowboys always have a good record. They always get to the playoffs, and they always choke it away. So until they can show I obviously my opinion doesn't matter to them, but until they can prove it, people are not going to take the Cowboys seriously once playoff time comes around. I'm sorry. And I feel the same way about the Vikings. Even though the Vikings have clinched their division, they are the division leader. I also just don't think they hold a candle to any of these other teams that are a lot better than them as well.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Jefferson's incredible, and their defense, although it's still not that good, it's been better than I thought it would be, but I don't know. I just can't see a world where Kirk Cousins wins 4 playoff games in a row and they win the Super Bowl, or even 3 and get to the Super Bowl. I just don't see it happening. What does he have? 2 career playoff wins, only 1 in Minnesota? Is that what it is? If I'm not
I do believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they actually no, he is no, because the Packers beat him when he made the playoffs in Washington. So I believe his only playoff win was over the Saints in Minnesota. I think he only has one career playoff win. So yeah,
No, you might have heard.
I don't see a world where the Vikings are going that far. But
Yeah.
we can kind of wrap it up here because I think we're agreed that the NFC, it's basically going to come down to whoever out of Washington, New York, and Seattle loses out will be the team that doesn't make the playoffs. And I think we both agree it's the Giants, right?
Yeah.
That's the prediction. Okay, yeah. It's just the Giants don't have skill players. Like their receiver one is Darius Slayton, and I like him to a degree, but and when even Saquon hasn't been, he's been good all year, but he's not like Derrick Henry 3 years ago where he just powered the Titans through the playoffs. Like I don't think Saquon's playing that good right now. I think he's been really, really good, but I don't think he's been dominant. So I don't think this Giants team has it. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think it's that saying that people say that football is the ultimate team game, and I totally agree. There's only so much, Saquon can do. Like he can't carry this team to the
Right.
playoffs on his back. Even in the NBA, and I understand this isn't always the scenario, but one good player can carry your NBA team very far if necessary.
Yeah.
And like obviously that's not sustainable in the long run, but you just can't do that in the NFL. And I totally agree with you. There's no receivers to throw through. And Darius Slayton's great, but Darius Slayton's a number 2 or a number 3 receiver. I agree. I think the Giants are they can only go so far with their great head coach Brian Dable, who me personally I think should be coach of the year. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. I go back and forth with him and Pete Carroll, but
that's
those are
fair.
definitely the top two candidates in my eyes. But yeah, it's just there's only so much they can do. There's only so much the culture and the coaching can do to will this team before the talent starts to become more important. And we can wrap it up here. Who are you picking with about a month to go in this regular season? What's your Super Bowl pick right now?
Ooh, I think it's a big toss up in terms of like you know what? I'm gonna have to go probably Bills or Chiefs for the AFC team. I think if it really comes down to it, I think the Bills would beat the Chiefs. So I think the Bills would be the Super Bowl contender for the AFC. And as for the NFC, I understand that they hit a snag in the road when they lost to the Commanders, but this Eagles team is, even when they've played not great, they have still managed to pull out a victory, which I think is a sign of a good team, which I don't remember who said it exactly, but I saw someone say, a few weeks back, they're like, good teams still win when they play ugly. And I think that's incredibly true and incredibly important. I think that regardless of the fact that maybe you played a bad game, if you can still pull out the win, that's a good team. That's a resilient team. And I think that's what the Eagles are. They're 11-1 for a reason. And I think a Buffalo Bills Eagles Super Bowl would be absolutely exceptional to watch. And I hope that is the Super Bowl matchup because that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm in agreement with you on the Eagles. I don't see with the Niners losing Jimmy G, I don't see how the Eagles don't make it to the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be an Eagles Cowboys NFC title game. I
Yeah.
really do. But that means it's a pick. Who do you think is the better team in that division? And I as much as I like how the Cowboys are playing, I think they're a top 5 team in the NFL. I think the Eagles are better. I think they're more talented and I trust them more. And at that point, yeah, I think the Eagles are going to make the Super Bowl. I think it's well deserved after the incredible Howie Roseman's Executive of the Year. If we're talking about awards, I think there's just so many moves they've made in season, before the season, 2 years ago, whatever. You can trace it back as short term or as long term as you want. It's been a lot of good moves for the Eagles in the last couple of years, and I think it's all coming to head this year. So I would go with them. I would agree with you. They're my NFC pick. AFC, I'm feeling the Chiefs over the Bills right now. I just think the Chiefs are playing more complete football. I think Pat Mahomes, weirdly, is playing more free than ever without Tyreek Hill. I just think that they look really sustained. Defensively, they're underrated. I think they're at least above average defensively. They're definitely top half of the league. And when you got Kelsey and they have this depth at receiver now where it seems like Mahomes can make a play to anyone at any given moment, whether it's Juju, you got Pacheco at running back, you got Hardman's hurt right now, but he was playing well. MVS has played well. So across the board, I just think Mahomes is due for a second ring, and maybe the Eagles would beat the Chiefs. That would be interesting. Andy Reid against his old team in the Super Bowl. But I think that's what my pick will be right now. Chiefs, Eagles. I think that's my pick.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Honestly, I don't want to be mean to the Eagles, but I don't think they'd beat the Chiefs, truthfully. I just think that I something about the Chiefs, even when like actually, I don't know because
It's close. It's close. It really
their
is.
defense is a little bit suspect at times. A Chiefs
The Eagles front seven would
great as
pretty
well.
much take the run out of that game for the Chiefs.
Yeah,
They'd have
honestly,
to
that's a
pass a
really
lot.
good point. A Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl would also be incredible to watch, and I think that's really exciting about like the Chiefs and Bills because I think that's also going to be like the AFC title game
Yeah,
if they don't meet sooner than that.
yeah.
But yeah, wow, that's actually a really good point. Who knows? But I think those are definitely the three best teams in the league, and I think anyone who's saying otherwise is just trying to fool themselves. So
Yeah, I would say, yeah, Bills, Chiefs, Eagles. Yeah, I think Cowboys and Dolphins probably round up that top five for me right now. I don't know what my power rankings I put out each week on Twitter say for this week specifically, but just in a vacuum generally, those are probably the five teams that over the rest of the season that I'm most looking at. So that's what I would say. So we agree on the Eagles, and we basically just like last year, what happened last year, we're saying pick them between the Chiefs and the Bills. Well, actually, that's not true because the Bengals made the Super Bowl. That's the funniest thing. Everyone talks about the Bills Chiefs game from last year and how it was like the definitive matchup of the playoffs. It's like, oh yeah, but neither of those teams made the Super Bowl, which is kind of crazy. So
yeah.
the Bengals kind of own the Chiefs too. They've beaten them 3 straight times.
Yeah, they have, which I think is also it's not something we really touched too much upon in this episode, but it is kind of weird that they seem to have the Chiefs number. So, if the Bengals meet the Chiefs in the playoffs at some point, who knows what's going to happen with that as well, which I think is like, even though like this NFL season has been very weird in terms of like it's very top heavy like league, like there's very clearly a distinct line between the good teams and the bad teams this year, but I think it's also like the good teams. It's been very interesting with who's good and stuff like that. I didn't think the Dolphins we were going to be playing this well. I figured we'd be like at like a 6-6 record right now, and we've exceeded those expectations. So I think it's a really exciting year for the playoffs. I'm really excited, but I don't. As much as the Bengals had a magical run last year, I don't think it's on the cards for them this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I don't think the Bengals are gonna make it as far as they did. But once again, they're starting to catch fire right now as well. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Fan Committee. We'll be watching closely over the last month of this season to see how this situation evolves. Mike, I don't know when we're going to be back out on the pod, whether it's going to be next week, but we're definitely going to be doing one after the Packers and Dolphins game
Absolutely.
on Christmas. I'm excited for that. So you guys can at least look forward to that. We'll try to do some other stuff. Mike, I remember before the season, we were all excited about that game. Now it's just going to be the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill's going to have 300 passing yards or receiving yards. It's going to be ridiculous.
We'll see. Hey, it's been a weird season, like we were talking about. You never know.
To be fair, Christian Watson is basically Tyreek Hill and Jerry Rice combined into one. So maybe we'll win that game.
Christian Watson has been, we haven't talked about him a lot, unfortunately, since we haven't been doing.
I purposely avoided as much Packers talk as I could in this episode.
But Watson's great, and I think it's a great pick for you guys. So
yeah, we'll see how it works out. All right, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you aren't already. And other than that, have a great rest of your day. Catch you next time.